Amazing discovery revealed. New MAID frozen in shock as incredible family secret is exposed. Maria stood frozen in the expansive attic, surrounded by the quiet echoes of a life she didn't belong to. Dust motes danced in the beams of sunlight filtering through the slats, each revealing a piece of someone else's history. She held the ornate journal in her hands, the delicate pages whispering tales of a woman named Elizabeth. Heart racing, she could almost feel the weight of judgment pressing down from the walls of the ancestral home where she worked. The affluent family she served looked down upon her, their glances sharp with disdain. They viewed her not as the resilient mother she was, but as a mere maid, someone destined for lowly tasks. Every time she picked up the polishing cloth, swiping dust from their ornate furnishings, Maria felt the chasm of their world widen. This was a life she yearned to rise above for the sake of her son, Eli. Each wrinkle of her hands told the story of two jobs relentlessly pursued to secure a college fund for him, of dreams painted against a backdrop of stark reality. She knew they would never understand her struggles, or the fire that burned quietly inside her, ignited further by the discovery she now grasped. As she flipped open the journal, she found herself transported. Elizabeth's secrets unfolded like a fragile flower, blooming with artistic talents and untapped riches. The glow of possibility beckoned to her, a promise that maybe she was destined for more than endless cleaning. But deep down, panic clawed at her insides. Clive, her employer, harbored an unyielding bias toward his own heritage. Fear of exposure could suffocate her burgeoning hopes. She could lose it all in an instant, the fragile stability she had built single-handedly. Should she dare to expose Elizabeth's story if it meant risking her meager salary? The conflicting thoughts rattled in her mind, anguish clawing at her resolve. She could picture Eli's bright smile, igniting her determination. But what if this journey unveiled unflattering truths about his own roots? Could daring to paint their family's narrative cost her the very essence of their livelihood? Doubt latched onto her heart, squeezing hard, igniting a tempest within her that she struggled to control. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she struggled to reconcile Elizabeth's oppressive past with her own fledgling ambitions, the walls felt like they were closing in. What if with her first brushstroke she unleashed something far deeper than mere artistic expression? The looming exhibition promised either liberation or, worse, exposure. A chill rippled through her as reality collided with suspense. Could she step into the light confronting Elizabeth's legacy? Or would she shrink back, surrendering her voice and future to remain obscured within the shadows? Every heartbeat echoed a question. Was she brave enough to find out? The weight of the journal became a tangible representation of her turmoil, its pages filled with promises and peril alike. Her next move might either shatter her world or set her free. In that moment, as the attic's dust settled, Maria faced the precipice of a decision that could change everything, or nothing at all. Maria's fingers trembled as they brushed against the delicate pages of Elizabeth's journal. The attic's dust seemed to swirl more intensely around her, the motes now thickening like the fog of uncertainty enveloping her mind. Each word she read pulled her deeper into a life of ambition and artistry. Here was a woman whose dreams soared high before she was pinned beneath the weight of societal expectations. But could Maria draw strength from Elizabeth's struggle, or was she destined to repeat history locked in servitude? She stole a glance back toward the narrow staircase leading to the rest of the house, her heart racing like a wild bird trapped against its cage. Clive's voice echoed in her mind, ridiculing ideas like ambition and creativity, branding them as threats to the status quo. He was a man molded by privilege, and for him, anything outside predefined lines was a reason for disdain. But there, in her hands, lay a blueprint for breaking free, a revelation of possibilities. A soft thud from the floor below jolted her back to reality. Paranoia prickled at her skin. Should she bury the journal deeper in the recesses of the attic, risk losing her discovery, or risk confronting what the truth might bring? These pages held secrets that could unravel the very threads of the life she had painstakingly sewn together for herself and Eli. Her decision-making process now felt like a delicate balancing act, where every potential misstep tilted her closer to destruction. The instinct to protect her son surged fiercely. She envisioned Eli's wide eyes, innocent yet questioning, and she wondered what truth she would share with him if the world cracked open around them. Could uncovering Elizabeth's legacy teach Eli the courage to chase his dreams? The possibilities buzzed in her mind like bees in spring. Each flit and flutter echoed with the hope of what lay ahead. She felt an agonizing tug. Part of her wanted to shy away from the threat of exposure, but another part of her couldn't deny the spark of ambition igniting within. It was less about the art itself and more about an identity that had lain dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Quietly, she folded the journal under her arm, determined to explore its contents with new eyes. This wasn't merely a relic of another day, it was a calling. Her hands clenched around it, anchoring herself to the strength it represented. The decision crystallized in her mind. She would not let fear dictate the future. That night after her shift, Maria retreated to her small apartment, the journal resting heavily on her lap. The faint light of a flickering bulb illuminated her determined expression. Nervously tearing a piece of paper from a nearby notebook, she began to draft her first piece inspired by Elizabeth's stories. What if she poured her heart out onto the pages? What if she stepped beyond the shadows and painted life into her own narrative? As the ink flowed, she felt empowered. Hours slipped by unnoticed, consumed by the catharsis of expression. The world around her faded, replaced by the vivid depictions of her desires and dreams. This felt right. And yet, a gnawing fear lurked at the back of her mind. What if Clive discovered her burgeoning talent? What if her hidden voice became the reason for her downfall? Maria paused, the faint echoes of her thoughts reminding her of the risks. But she couldn't turn back. The time had come to face the choice that lay before her. Slowly, Maria began to understand that this story, her story, held the power to redefine not only her future but her son's as well. And the night grew darker, whispering secrets of courage, as the first brushstroke in her journey approached. The moment of truth was nearing, and whether she embraced it or turned away would shape the story to come. What obstacle awaited her next? Maria awoke to the soft glow of dawn filtering through the cracked blinds of her apartment. The journal lay open next to her, a tangled heap of papers, ink stains dotting the fabric of her ambition. She had hardly slept, thoughts swirling in her mind, a maelstrom of fear and determination. Every sentence she had written now echoed like a heartbeat in her chest, propelling her into a new reality. But the creeping doubt gnawed at her, taunting her with every tick of the clock. Today would be different. She pushed herself up, feeling the weight of the journal as if it were a living entity, urging her to take action. It held Elizabeth's dreams, but also hinted at Maria's possibility, a bridge waiting to be crossed. She had to confront what lay on the other side. Before work, Maria took a deep breath and stepped into the small garden she had tended. The plants were wilting, their vibrant colors fading, a reflection of her own suppressed potential. As she kneaded the soil, questions tangled in her mind. What would happen if Clive found out? Would he smother her spirit as he had done before, dismissing her efforts with a sneer? Or would he recognize her determination and confront his own insecurities? Determined to reclaim not only her artistic identity but her sense of self, she made a pact with herself. She would confront Clive. She could no longer cower under the weight of his disdain. Her new resolve sparked an unfamiliar flame within her, warm and fierce. Perhaps this creative endeavor was, in fact, a larger awakening to her own worth. At work, glancing at her colleagues hustling through their tasks, her thoughts turned towards her writing. The words breathed life onto the pages she had planted with her dreams. She knew she couldn't keep it hidden forever. But sharing her pieces would mean exposing her vulnerabilities. If she risked failure, could she find strength in the aftermath? "Hey, Maria!" a co-worker called out, startling her from her reverie. It was Melanie, the ebullient office assistant whose creativity thrived in the mundane. "What's up, you okay?" Her instinct was to clamp down and say everything was fine, but the flicker of courage wouldn't let her retreat. "I wrote something," Maria confessed, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with uncertainty. "Really? That's awesome. Can I read it?" The invitation pelted against her defenses. What if the world that licked at her heels charged with skepticism? Yet what if it embraced her voice, nurturing it when she felt it needed to be exposed? "Sure," Maria finally responded, surprise cracking her facade. That evening, Maria sat with Melanie in a corner cafe, the air thick with the scent of coffee and sweet pastries. With every word she read, Maria's heart raced. From her chest, fragments of her soul poured forth, bearing the fears and aspirations she had hidden for so long. Melanie's attentive gaze, piercing through doubt, filled the room with a welcomed energy. "You have a gift," Melanie murmured when Maria finished, her eyes alight with excitement. "You need to share it with more people. Trust me." Maria's pulse quickened at the thought of revealing her work to the world beyond their small office. But then, an image of Clive's disapproval crashed into her mind, urging doubts to swell. Could she take this leap? As if sensing the hesitation, Melanie added, "What's the worst that could happen? You'll grow. It's part of the process." The words resonated deeply within Maria, igniting a new flicker of hope amidst her swirling fears. Walking home, under the darkening sky, she understood. Embracing her story meant becoming her own champion. It meant writing for Eli and for herself. Yet, as she turned the corner towards her apartment, the haunting suggestion of Clive's likely reaction loomed large. The confrontation was inevitable, and in that moment she realized her personal battle was just beginning. In the stillness of the night, with the journal poised before her once again, Maria steadied her breath. The path she chose would lead her toward an uncertain confrontation. Little did she know, change was already afoot, rippling under the surface, ready to test her newfound courage. What challenges awaited in the face of her rising truth? Maria barely slept that night, yet her dreams were vivid, swirling with themes of defiance and solace. Each scene in her mind showcased her standing firm against Clive, articulating her thoughts with eloquence, fearlessly showcasing her writing. But morning broke with the confusing murmur of doubt that clouded her resolve. She couldn't continue oscillating between courage and hesitation. Today was critical. After a quick breakfast, she gathered her scattered pages from the journal and placed them into a neat folder. With each sheet that folded under her fingers, Maria felt her heart resonate with a new rhythm, a beat of authenticity. Today, she would not only share her work with her colleagues, she would prepare herself to stand firm against Clive's looming shadow. Stepping into the office, she felt the air thick with unspoken expectations, her own and those of others. Each glance from her colleagues was a reminder that she was treading on new ground, one that could shift beneath her at any moment. She wondered if they sensed it too, this whispered talk of change, bubbling beneath the surface of the routine. "Hey, are you okay?" Melanie approached her again, a concerned expression etching her features. Maria hesitated. "I think I'm ready to show everyone my work, not just you." The words spilled out, pulling her deeper into a commitment she had been avoiding. "Exactly. But, are you ready for Clive's feedback?" Melanie's voice held a mix of excitement and caution, mirroring Maria's own apprehension. "His disapproval haunts me." The admission shot out like an arrow. She couldn't suppress her feelings any longer. The prospect of using her creativity as a shield against his negativity stirred something urgent within her. "Then, think of this as your chance to prove him wrong. You owe it to yourself." Melanie's words landed as a charge, electrifying the air around them. The thought of standing before her co-workers triggered a tight knot in her stomach, Yet it was different from the despair Clive instilled. This knot was a reminder that she was on the verge of something transformative. As the clock inched toward noon, Maria gathered her courage and headed toward the break room where her colleagues usually reviewed ideas, a casual yet intimidating space. They were the same people whose enthusiasm for trivial projects often overshadowed her quiet contributions. Would they receive her work with the kindness Melanie showed, or would they disregard her? She reluctantly initiated the conversation, her breath hitching in her throat. "Can I share something I wrote?" Silence hovered momentarily, then heads nodded in encouragement. With shaky hands, Maria unveiled her folder and began to read, her voice tremoring but resolute. Each word felt like a stepping stone pacing her through an emotional landscape characterized by vulnerability and hope. As her coworkers listened, she caught glimpses of reactions. A furrowed brow, a smile of recognition, and even nods of understanding. With each passage, the knot in her stomach slowly unraveled, giving way to a burgeoning thrill. She could do this. She wasn't this timid girl anymore. Then Clive walked into the room, his brow furrowed as he caught wind of the gathering. Maria's heart stuttered. The very presence she had sought to confront had now become an object of focus. "What's all this?" Clive's voice echoed, laden with sarcasm that clung to the air. Another one of Maria's little projects? Her breath caught, and for a moment the room fell silent. The enthusiastic nods of her colleagues wavered under his piercing gaze. But something stirred inside Maria, an instinct to resist being diminished. "This is my work, Clive," she asserted, her voice gaining strength. "And it matters." His expression shifted, surprise bubbling momentarily before disdain surfaced. "Are you serious? This isn't going to win any awards. You should know that by now." His words sliced through her confidence like glass. Instead of crumbling, Maria held steady. She met Clive's gaze. Behind his derision, she sensed a flicker of insecurity. A reflection of her own fears stared back at her. It dawned on her then. This battle wasn't just against him, it was for herself. "I'm ready to embrace who I am, even if you can't see it," she declared, the weight of her journal now a testament of her growth. Deep inside, a new resolve blossomed. Clive might not change overnight, but Maria had taken a pivotal step toward self-acceptance. She paused, allowing the ripple of her statement to settle. Walking home that evening, buoyed by a mix of adrenaline and doubt, she realized this confrontation was just the tipping point. The real work lay ahead, navigating her identity against expectations, hers and others. Tomorrow would bring persistence and deeper introspection. But as she descended the steps to her apartment, the questions of her next moves loomed larger. How far would she go to defend her narrative in a world that often silenced it? The following morning, Maria woke to a restless mind, thoughts of yesterday's confrontation still swirling around her. The chill of doubt lingered, but she also felt a spark of determination. Today would not simply be about defending her narrative. It would be about taking ownership of her identity, asserting herself as a writer among writers, as a voice that deserved to be heard. She brewed her coffee, the rich aroma filling her small kitchen as she mulled over plans for the day ahead. Each sip stirred a sense of purpose within her, but it was accompanied by the haunting presence of Clive's dismissive remarks. They echoed in her mind, yet they no longer felt insurmountable. She resolved to seek more than acceptance. She sought affirmation of her own worth. Clive's presence loomed large in her thoughts, but she realized she could no longer let him dictate the narrative of her experiences. This realization was pivotal. She needed to confront not just his criticisms, but also her own insecurities. She picked up her journal and jotted down affirmations. "I am a writer. My voice deserves to be heard. I have something meaningful to share." Arriving at the office, Maria felt a fusion of anticipation and anxiety. Her palms were clammy, yet her mind buzzed with ideas. She spotted Melanie in the break room, engaged in conversation with others, laughter punctuating the air. Maria took a moment to breathe, to remind herself that her colleagues were allies, not adversaries. As she approached, she noticed the change in atmosphere. Heads turned and smiles greeted her. They had witnessed her courage yesterday, and now, the supportive nods she received felt like a gentle tug urging her forward. Committing to vulnerability meant embracing not only the fear but also the possibility of connection. "Hey, how are you feeling today?" Melanie asked, her tone inviting. "I'm ready to share something new," Maria replied, her conviction solidifying in the face of her lingering doubts. With her folder clutched tightly once more, Maria prepared to present a revised piece she had worked on overnight, infused with reflections from her confrontation. The break room buzzed with energy as she gathered her colleagues, their attentive faces burning bright with curiosity. "Yesterday was a lot for me," Maria began, her voice steadying. "Clive's words pushed me to think deeper about what I want to write and share." There was a noticeable shift among her colleagues' responses, an energy that conveyed solidarity. As she read, Maria observed her audience engage with her on a new level. They weren't just polite listeners anymore. They were co-creators of the moment, reacting, reflecting, and building upon her narrative. Her words flowed unhindered, weaving personal ambition into professional aspiration, transforming the anxiety within her to a powerful experience of pulsating connection. When she finished, silence enveloped the room. Then an eruption of applause broke forth, and she felt tears well in her eyes. It wasn't the applause that moved her, but the acknowledgement of her vulnerability, her narrative finally recognized as worthy. "Maria, that was incredible. Your journey is inspiring," one coworker exclaimed. "We can feel the authenticity," Melanie added, her supportive gaze anchoring Maria amidst the rising tide of encouragement. The approval of her colleagues filled her with warmth, but amidst the exhilaration was Clive's shadow. She understood that today's triumph did not mean he would change. He would still be a source of challenge. But now, Maria felt empowered to manage that tension rather than be consumed by it. It was a dynamic she could navigate. Later that day, Maria sat at her desk and felt a lingering thought percolate. How could she foster a more inclusive environment for her creative expression? Perhaps she could organize regular gatherings to share work among colleagues. The idea unfolded like petals of a flower, each aspect nourishing her growth as a writer, guiding her aspirations into actionable frameworks. Yet as she planned her next steps, the resonance of Clive's earlier criticisms echoed back, leading her to question. Would she confront him directly, challenging his perceptions? Or would she continue to rise, letting her accomplishments speak louder than his derision? The very act of dreaming big posed an imminent dilemma. The next step would demand more courage than articulating her thoughts. Maria sat at the crossroads of choice, ready to forge her narrative anew. How far was she willing to go in this journey of self-advocacy, especially now that the battle within had just begun? Maria's mind raced as she considered the implications of her earlier triumph. The applause had faded, but the exhilaration of sharing her journey persisted. It was a shared moment, an invitation to forge deeper connections, yet Clive's shadow lingered ominously, whispering criticisms that threatened to undermine her newfound confidence. Choosing to confront him was tempting, an opportunity to assert her narrative directly. But what would that achieve? Their past encounters replayed in her mind like a stale reel, filled with condescension and dismissive tendencies that suffocated dialogue. Perhaps his presence demanded a different strategy, one that would elevate her rather than engage in combat. Determined to make progress, Maria dove into the logistics of organizing those gatherings. She envisioned a space where creativity fostered honesty, encouraging colleagues to share their work without the weight of judgment. Yet, amidst the excitement of planning, doubts crept in again. Would anyone attend? Would Clive mock her aspirations if they fell flat? Taking a deep breath, she poured her thoughts and fears into her journal. As she scribbled, it became evident that vulnerability was the bridge to connection. If she could invite her colleagues into her journey, perhaps they would act as a collective bulwark against Clive's skepticism. Later, seated at a table in the office cafe, Maria tapped her pen against her notebook, contemplating the framework for her gatherings. She wanted to name it something inviting, perhaps creative exchange, where ideas could flow without interruption or derision. Formulating a soft structure felt empowering, like carving out her space within the larger environment, but then she faltered. What if Clive attended? Would he derail the conversation? The image of his smirk flared in her mind. Frustration swelled within. How could she allow him to dictate the atmosphere of something meant for growth and expression? An idea sparked. Instead of hovering over her plans with trepidation, she could set ground rules. The gathering could emphasize respect, open-mindedness, and support. This wasn't merely about sharing work, it was about cultivating a culture. As she fleshed out her ideas, energy surged. She decided to run her vision by Melanie, who had proven to be a solid ally. Over the next few days, Maria refined her plan, infusing it with elements of accountability. She anticipated some pushback, particularly from Clive, but she was armed with the conviction born from her earlier triumph. Each time she envisioned Clive's possible response, the spark of defiance shone brighter. The sudden realization struck her. It was not his feedback that defined her creativity. She had the autonomy to craft the environment she desired, regardless of his participation. Finally, she gathered the courage to approach Melanie with her proposal, her heart racing with both excitement and anxiety. I want to create a space where we can share and develop our work. I'm calling it creative exchange. What do you think? Melanie's eyes lit up. That's fantastic, Maria. We need more of this. Let's pitch it to the team together. The simple affirmation sent warmth flooding through Maria. As they brainstormed logistics, ideas flowed freely, sparking innovative ideas for the gatherings. They mapped out a timeline, decided on a recurring schedule, and outlined potential themes for each session. With every detail solidifying, Maria felt the weight of uncertainty lift, replaced by the exhilaration of possibility. As Maria returned to her desk that afternoon, she felt invigorated by her active choices. The vision was taking shape, yet the thought of confronting Clive lingered. Would she face him before the first gathering? Or would she let her work and the positive atmosphere speak for themselves? The path ahead was still unclear, and with each heartbeat her anxiety entwined itself with anticipation. Amidst this whirlwind of planning and emotion, Maria couldn't shake a thought. What if Clive didn't just mock her, but tried to assert authority over the gatherings? Would she be able to stand her ground, or would his contempt pull her back into the shadows? The time had come to decide whether her journey of self-advocacy would lead her to a confrontation, or simply require her to elevate her own voice above his. As the sun began to set outside, casting a fiery glow through her office window, Maria felt an imminent choice coming, one that would define her trajectory not just as a writer, but as an empowered individual standing against silent disapproval. The next morning, the air in the office buzzed with a potent mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Maria arrived early, her mind still swirling with the plans for the creative exchange, each moment turning worry into fervor as she prepared herself for the day ahead. She wanted to amplify the excitement surrounding her initiative, yet the prospect of Clive's inevitable presence loomed like a thundercloud. As she settled at her desk, Maria rearranged a stack of papers and straightened her bookmarks, seeking a method to combat her jitters. The meetings she had envisioned could change the atmosphere of their workplace, a ripple effect that could foster innovation and creativity. But Clive's discontent was a dragon whose breath had frozen her fiery spirit. Would he try to trample her plans before they even took flight? Hey, ready for a coffee run? Melanie appeared, her smile a balm against Maria's rising tension. Absolutely, Maria replied, grateful for a moment away from her desk. As they walked to the cafe, a question pushed its way to the forefront of Maria's thoughts. What if Clive challenges this whole idea? The fear slipped from her lips before she could catch it. Then we take it head on. You've got the momentum. You've been there before, Melanie encouraged. You're right, Maria sighed. I wish I could fast forward to the part where it all works out. Soon enough, they returned with steaming cups, buoyed by the caffeine and camaraderie. Maria's desk was now adorned with notes and sketches. The energy between them bolstered her confidence, but the real test was yet to come. They both knew Clive would be in the morning meeting, and as the clock crept toward the hour, her stomach twisted like a pretzel. The meeting began with the usual updates and chatter, the office atmosphere buzzing but tinged with undertones of unspoken critique. When the time arrived for her proposal, Maria felt her heart race, her pulse a drum in her ears. She cleared her throat, drawing in a breath before bounding into the pitch. "Everyone," she began, her voice steady, "I'm excited to share an initiative I believe can enrich our team's collaboration and creativity. I'm calling it Creative Exchange." As she spoke, the eyes in the room varied from curious to skeptical, but she pressed on. She described the framework and vision, inviting her colleagues to participate and share freely. Toward the back, she spotted Clive, his expression unreadable, but the faint twitch of his mouth gave her pause. "Interesting idea, Maria," he interjected, his tone dripping with condescension. "But what makes you think everyone will want to share their work in a space created by you, especially with such a lack of structure?" The room held its breath, Maria's thoughts racing. The very essence of her vision buzzed with potential vibrancy and connection, and here he was, attempting to weaponize doubt against her. The familiar feeling of being small crept in, but instead of retreating, something different burned within her, an ember of resilience. "I believe fostering a safe space is crucial for creative growth," Maria responded promptly, emphasizing her choice of words. "The structure I envision is based on respect for each other's work, allowing us to explore ideas in a non-judgmental environment." Clive's brow furrowed. His attempt to undermine her was not as effective as he had hoped. Observing her colleagues nodding in agreement turned the tide within her. She knew then that this was not about dominating the conversation. It was about anchoring support and collaboration, standing firm against any storm he might conjure. "Why don't you let me lead the first session?" Clive challenged, crossing his arms. "We might need a little expertise to guide it after all." Maria's heart raced. This was the crossroads. This was the moment of truth. "Actually, I think it's important for this gathering to come from all of us, not just one voice," she replied, her steadiness surprising even herself. "Everyone has something valuable to contribute." The ripple in the air shifted palpably. Some of her colleagues started to share encouraging nods, but not Clive. His smirk had turned into a scowl, a frown that screamed frustration at her refusal to yield. Somehow, how she stood in that moment felt like a victory in itself, a reclamation of her voice sharp and true. Yet, as the meeting adjourned, a sense of uncertainty tainted the exhilaration. She could feel Clive's ire pooling like a tide ready to sweep her off her feet. What retaliatory move would he make now? Would he dismiss her initiative, erode the support she had begun to nurture among her colleagues? As anxiety and confidence danced within her, Maria realized that she had set a powerful wheel in motion. Whether she could contain the fallout depended on her next steps, her engagement, and her own unwavering commitment to the creative exchange. Thus the question hung tantalizingly in the air. Could she maintain her resolve as Clive sought to undermine her efforts, or would she become the target of his derision and judgment? The path ahead was fraught with potential, and her heart raced with the thrill of both fear and possibility. In the aftermath of the meeting, Maria sat at her desk, her heart still fluttering from the intensity of her confrontation with Clive. The air in the office felt thicker now, charged with an unseen tension that wrapped around her like a heavy cloak. She typed up notes from the meeting, focusing on every supportive nod she'd seen and replaying her own words in her mind. Was it enough? Could the budding support withstand Clive's looming discontent? The incident had stirred something deep within her, a determination fueled by the flicker of respect she had garnered from her colleagues. They had sensed her confidence, and that ignited a sense of responsibility within her. She needed to keep this momentum. But how? Melanie popped her head in, her energy still radiant despite the storm brewing around them. "How do you feel? That was ballsy," she said, excitement flickering in her eyes. "I feel good, but I'm also in uncharted waters. Clive isn't going to let this go easily," Maria admitted, her voice wavering. "Let him come," Melanie exclaimed. "He has no idea who he's messing with." Maria smiled, appreciating Melanie's unwavering faith. Yet uncertainty gnawed at her. Yes, she had stood up to Clive, but that wasn't the end. This was merely a skirmish in a much larger battle. Later in the afternoon, Maria decided to sketch out an outline for the first creative exchange session. She envisioned a space where everyone's voice was equal, where ownership of ideas would breathe life into collaboration. The details began to take form in her mind, and with every stroke of her pen she felt the weight ease, replaced by a growing excitement. But her resolve was soon shaken when Clive unexpectedly approached her desk. He leaned casually against it, though his posture belied his customary stoicism. "Think you can just press on with your little project?" he asked, feigning nonchalance, but his voice was laced with a hint of menace. Maria's pulse quickened. She mustered her composure, gathering her thoughts like a shield. "Yes, I do. It's a team initiative, and the support I felt today tells me we're heading in the right direction." "Support? Is that what you call it?" His tone had dipped into sarcasm. "We both know I have the experience everyone relies on when it gets tough. If you flounder, they will look to me." Maria felt a mix of challenge and outrage. "This isn't about one person's expertise, Clive. It's about creating space for everyone to shine. This initiative is meant to uplift the team, not to be monopolized." For a moment silence enveloped them. Clive's eyes narrowed, weighing her words. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you when it all crumbles," he shot back before turning sharply on his heel. Exhaling deeply, Maria leaned back, the confrontation leaving her breathless but strangely exhilarated. This was a pivotal moment. She wasn't just defending an idea. She was staking her claim, her identity within this workplace. As the day wore on, she felt exhilaration rise within her. But the undertone of Clive's words lingered, darkening the edges of her newfound confidence. The vision of the creative exchange evoked both hope and dread. Would she rise to the occasion, galvanizing her peers? Or would Clive's shadow loom large enough to engulf them all in hesitation and doubt? Determined to rise above, she decided to reach out for support, a strategic plan forming in her mind. She would convene a small group of allies, those who had nodded in agreement, before the first creative exchange session. Solidarity, she realized, would be her strongest weapon. Suddenly, a new thought flickered through her mind. What if the secret to overcoming Clive's influence was not just collaboration but uncovering hidden strengths? As she contemplated this, a sense of clarity washed over her. The moment of truth was near, not just for the initiative, but for herself. And with that realization came a spark of curiosity. What uncharted talents lay dormant within her and her team, waiting to be unleashed against Clive's resistance? Maria woke up the next morning, the sunlight streaming through her window, awakening her mental resolve. Today marked the beginning of her initiative, a chance to shape not just a project but a new relationship among her colleagues. She made her way to work with an invigorating sense of purpose, rehearsing her speech in her mind. Each word was a defensive mechanism against the doubts that threatened to creep back in, especially Clive's lingering threats. As she entered the office, she noticed the usual bustle had an unusual undertone. Conversations hushed when she walked by, glances exchanged. It was clear she was now part of a subplot in the professional drama. But Maria refused to allow this dynamic to amorphize her resolve. This was her moment to catalyze change. She gathered her notes on the creative exchange and returned to her desk. A small but determined group gathered, 3 co-workers, each representing diverse departments with unique insights. They welcomed her with nods and affirmations, their anticipation palpable. "Thanks for coming, everyone. I think we have a real chance to create something impactful," Maria said, fighting against the tendency to downplay her vision. As she laid out the framework for the exchange, her confidence grew. "We're not just about sharing ideas, we're about finding our collective strengths, using them to challenge the status quo." The discussion flowed like a stream bed, gathering momentum. Ideas sprouted and branched out, each voice building on the last as they explored methods to involve more team members in the process. Maria marveled at the hidden talents emerging. Someone suggested icebreakers perfect for encouraging participation. Another drew parallels to past successful projects, reminding them of what had worked before but layering it with fresh perspectives. Midway through the session, the door swung open and there stood Clive, his presence instantly cooling the room. "What's this?" he snorted, arms crossed as if to physically block the progress behind her. His tone dripped with sarcasm, intended to intimidate. "A brainstorming session without the rest of the team. I hope you're not risking your credibility here." Maria felt the muscles in her stomach tighten while the air thickened again with tension. Her group looked between her and Clive anxiously, but she caught the glimmers of solidarity in their eyes, each of them sharing her determination. "No risks, just a chance to lay a foundation," she replied firmly, confident in her choice. "We believe in mutual empowerment, and that's what this session is about." Clive stepped closer, invading her space. "It's naive to think your little brainstorm can overshadow the reality of experience. Reality is what sets the stage, not optimism." Maria inhaled deeply, anger and fear churning within her. She could either retreat or stand tall. "Maybe it's time to redefine what experience means," she said, her voice steadying. "Focus doesn't always come from authority. Sometimes it comes from collaboration." For a moment the room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut. Clive's face shifted, revealing a mixture of annoyance and surprise. As he turned to leave, Maria felt lighter. The conversation was fleeting, yet it revealed a profound truth. She had the capacity to confront him, not just as a rival but as a rival with equally valid ideas. With this clash, she felt a fire ignite, not merely out of defiance but a new sense of direction. This was about growth, collective potential, and the courage to dismantle fear. In the days ahead, the planning for the creative exchange would continue, but she felt the contents of her heart transform. How could the rationalization of experience combat the dynamics of empowerment? Perhaps they could thrive together, forging an alliance that went beyond their immediate conflicts. Maria returned to the group, urgency flashing in her eyes. "Let's prepare for tomorrow's presentation. We need to present not just our project, but a united front." With her heart racing, she felt more inspired than ever. This was the beginning of something greater. Yet a whisper remained in the back of her mind. Would the validation they all sought be enough to rise against Clive's formidable will? The day was approaching when they would present, and the weight of its outcome loomed ahead, each heartbeat signaling the momentum of their unfolding destiny. Would they be met with resistance or acceptance? Only time would tell, and Maria felt the rush of determination wash over her once more. As dawn broke, Maria felt a renewed sense of purpose sparking within her. The day had arrived. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the presentation materials that tangibly represented her journey from a timid maid to an assertive member of the creative team. The journey to this point had been paved with confrontation, enlightenment, and a budding self-awareness that had finally garnered her the recognition she had longed for. Upon entering the office, she was greeted by her group, their shared excitement igniting an infectious energy. She sensed solidarity as they rehearsed their parts, fine-tuning the presentation. Each person's enthusiasm served as a reminder of the support system they had built together, a stark contrast to her previous feelings of isolation when working under Clive's shadow. The meeting room buzzed with an electric tension as colleagues gathered, all eyes eventually resting on Maria as she initiated the presentation. "Thank you for coming today. We're thrilled to share our initiative, Creative Exchange, a project rooted in collaboration and empowerment," she declared, her voice radiating confidence. As each member spoke, Maria felt her own nervousness fade, replaced by pride as they interwove their ideas, presenting a vision of dynamism. Each slide unfurled the potential of their collective efforts. When it was Maria's turn, she stepped forward, drawing from the lessons she had internalized since beginning this journey. Creative exchange isn't just about sharing ideas, but about nurturing a culture of respect and equality. We believe everyone has valuable contributions to make. And today, we invite each of you to be part of this process, she stated, feeling her words resonate through the room. However, as the final slide faded, Clive spoke up, his tone dripping with skepticism. "This sounds great in theory, but let's be realistic. Do you really believe you can achieve this without structure and without guidance?" In that moment, Maria grasped the gravity of the challenge. not just a project but an assertion of her newfound identity. A structure rooted in fear stifles creativity, Clive. What we need is encouragement, not decree. This project is about fostering an environment where everyone's voice matters equally. The reaction from around the room was electric. Whispers of agreement rippled among her colleagues. Surrounded by their nods of approval and understanding, Maria realized she had transcended the constraints of fear. This was a pivotal moment of solidarity and collective growth. Clive's disbelief reflected an outmoded perspective that no longer held dominion over their aspirations. As the meeting concluded, the applause that erupted felt like a warm embrace, affirming her pivotal role in redefining their workplace culture. The applause was not just for the project. It was for the courage she'd unveiled, a validation of her journey that felt deeply gratifying. Throughout the subsequent weeks, Maria harnessed this momentum. She crafted a calendar for the creative exchange, each session becoming richer as more voices joined in, weaving a tapestry of diverse perspectives and experiences. The confidence she'd cultivated translated into deeper connections within the team, an inspiring cultural shift away from Clive's earlier dominion. Then, late one afternoon, Clive approached her desk. His demeanor was different, flustered yet contemplative. "Maria, I underestimated you," he said, his brows furrowing. "You've brought something vital to the team. I realize now that my approach contributed to a stifling environment." In that moment of unexpected honesty, Maria recognized the contours of genuine growth in both herself and her employer. "It took courage to challenge the norms, Clive. Change is daunting, but it also opens doors for greater creativity and camaraderie," she replied, feeling a swell of satisfaction. As their conversation deepened, she understood that her individual victory had rippled outward, catalyzing transformation not just within her, but also challenging others to embrace their potential. By standing firm against fear and navigating unsure waters, Maria had reshaped her narrative and strengthened her self-worth. Walking home that evening, the soft glow of the streetlights illuminated her path, each step resonating with newfound clarity. The journey had cemented her identity as a writer, musician, and a confident voice, reshaping her life's backdrop. With each additional session of creative exchange, she noticed her colleagues thriving, their creativity ebbing and flowing, unfurling like a flower in the sun. In that rich tapestry of achievement, Maria felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This wasn't merely about overcoming, it was about rediscovery, a true realization of her capabilities. And in reflection, she acknowledged the layers of experience that had transformed her from Maria the maid into Maria the empowered advocate. She smiled to herself, remembering how facing one man's biases had ignited a revolution in her life and her workplace, turning challenges into platforms for collaboration. As she strode forward, she knew one thing was certain. The legacy of creativity, confidence, and collaboration was firmly in her hands, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. If you resonate with Maria's transformative journey, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover their own potential. Comment your thoughts on Maria's journey and what it means for overcoming challenges. And don't wait even one more second to share this inspiring video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Each action supports real change, and we can't do it without you.